Genes are passed down from parents to offspring.
Hi, hello. I think everyone and their mother heard of the Sydney Sweeney American Eagle jeans ad by now, and how it's an obvious, you can't exactly say it, Gen X dog whistle, as if not all her previous ads have been hinting towards it. From the Baskin Robbins one to the Bathwater soap as she's done. But I think many people have explained, most likely better than I will today, all the issues with said ad. It is one, a reference to the Brooke Shields 1980s ad, which we all know was a serious case of child exploitation by Calvin Klein when Brooke Shields was only 14. But despite it being disgusting, which, I'm not saying it's not, the Calvin's ad had a much different punch.
The secret of life lies hidden in the genetic code. Genes are fundamental in determining the characteristics of an individual and passing on these characteristics to succeeding generations. Occasionally, certain conditions produce a structural change in the gene, which will bring about the process of evolution. This may occur in one or more of the following ways. Firstly, by selective mating, in which a single gene type proves superior in transmitting its genes to future generations. Secondly, by gene drift, in which certain genes may fade away while other genes persist. And finally, by natural selection, which filters out those genes better equipped than others to endure in the environment. This may result in the origin of an entirely new species, which brings us to Calvin's and the survival of the fittest.
Calvin Klein jeans.
Despite Brooke Shields speaking about genetics in general, she does not mention genes as in genetics. She only mentions genes like the pants, and only mentions genes like the pants when speaking about natural selection, saying that's where Calvin's come in, which implies that the punch of the ad is that Calvin Klein beats the competition, beats the other genes. Calvin Klein's are the best genes you could possibly have. Brooke Shields' genetics personally are not mentioned, which means that while the ad was disgusting, sexualizing, and exploitative towards barely a teenager Brooke Shields, it did not hit the way that Sydney Sweeney's American Eagle jeans ad had.
Genes are passed down from parents to offspring, often determining traits like hair color, personality, and even eye color. My genes are blue.
Sydney Sweeney has great genes.
In the Sydney ad, it says Sydney Sweeney has good genes, as in genetics, while American Eagle has good genes, as in pants, which one is a cheap pun, like in marketing in general, and two, saying said pun with an obviously blue-eyed, fake blonde or whitewashed blonde in a very sexualized, like, jean top, and honestly, in my opinion, very unflattering jeans, but that is really irrelevant, is an obvious eugenics dog whistle. But I want to touch on Sydney in general as a horribly marketed and too accessible sex symbol, and how, in my opinion, it cheapens her value greatly, her team's value greatly, and honestly how it's impressive to fumble your career after only 5 short years of being in the scene. So Sydney Sweeney got her breakout role in the 2019 HBO, basically a hit show, Euphoria. I'm sure everyone heard of it, the one with Zendaya and Hoffer Shaker, where most of us know her from. She started playing the character of Cassie, which I'm sure you also know, a character who was a fan favorite in season 1, I remember that time, yet became hated by the fandom for the character's actions in season 2. However, Sydney's performance on the show in both seasons, despite the fact that most fans despised the character itself, was praised, and she was already rumored to be the next big thing, or at least that she will be given a chance or an attempt to be the next big thing. Back then, Sydney spoke with magazines how she wished to be seen as more than just a bombshell, that she hated how people focus more on her chest than her acting abilities, and back then, people, myself included, could certainly sympathize with her, considering how women in Hollywood are treated. And especially since we saw that kind of story many times. A very attractive actress, for example, Pamela Anderson or things like that, Marilyn Monroe, who gets simply typecast or ruined for a feature or multiple features or just looks overall that are stunning, or how we imagine an attractive woman, and thus gets typecast. Sydney also played a character in The Handmaid's Tale, the TV show adaptation of Margaret Atwood's modern classic, The Handmaid's Tale, which, if you did not know, is a dystopia where women's rights are fully stripped. It's a horrifying read and watch, but in my opinion, especially the read, considering I both watched and read it, world, but it is an art piece in itself and an important read and critique of the dangers of the path we could be heading toward and that we're unfortunately sometimes headed toward. But that was me digressing. She also had a role in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which now, or last year, especially with the release of Honora, and The Substance, was said to be where the hottest new Hollywood actors in this age had roles. So, for example, Margaret Qualley, who starred in The Substance, Mikey Madison, who starred in Honora and became the youngest Grammy winner, or the first Gen Z actress who got a Grammy. I am not sure about that fact. Maya Hawke, who was, despite being a Nepo baby, then broke out in Stranger Things. So, in general, was deemed to be one of the up-and-coming greats or the new generation of actors. And she had a very successful public 2023, starring in Anyone But You, which was a rom-com with Glenn Powell that had people for a while saying that rom-coms could possibly be back. It sparked back that rom-com conversation, and while it was not deemed incredible, it was deemed miles better and almost kind of reminded of the peak rom-com era. During that time, she got her first dip in controversy, considering there was rumors about a cheating scandal between her and Glenn Powell, that Sydney was cheating on her fiancé with Glenn Powell. And there was also, I think that was in 2023, a photo she posted from her mother's birthday that was all country themed with cowboy hats and a barn, but more importantly, a man, presumably her family member, who was wearing a Blue Lives Matter shirt. And a lot of people saw that as a warning sign, yet she explained something about how it was a family event, and how I think she more avoided the topic, if my memory serves me correctly, but said basically that she is not, and people were willing to give her the benefit of the doubt. Even in 2024, which was last year, she starred in Immaculate, which was a religious horror where her performance was praised, even if the movie itself was only okay or decently received in the horror community in the general public. And will soon star in Christy, a movie about the boxer Christy Martin, which in 2021, 2, and 3 was said by the people who were analyzing her career as something Sydney should do. They said Sydney should get an ugly role in order to cement her serious actress image and in order to show the public, or even the stubborn incel side of the public, that she is a serious actress despite of how she looks. And considering she had a barrage of basically harassers on social media who were either saying she's ugly or sexualizing her, the public, most of the public, was on her side because it was a sympathetic scene we've seen 1,000 times before. So on paper, she's doing great. How does she then, as I said, cheapen her appeal? It's the ads she takes. And I'm saying this long before the frankly horrifying American Eagle and the Dr. Squash Badwater ad. So for example, Sydney is often seen sponsoring Miu Miu, though I don't think she's on their official ambassador list. She worked with Armani and Armani Beauty. She partnered with Guess. She is the official ambassador of Laneige, which when she sponsored them in 2023, they were already massive and they are still massive. A Korean beauty brand. Their lip masks are massive, massive, massive. Just a very luxury sponsorship. And Kerastase, which is a luxury hair care brand. In 2020, she was even a face of Savage X Fenty for a moment there, and was a long-standing partner of Samsung, one of their rare in the West, or one of their rare not in the K-pop scene, and was actually seen carrying around that Samsung, which Samsung ambassadors are notorious for sponsoring Samsung yet having an iPhone behind the scenes, which is stupid as someone who is a ride or die Samsung fan, but it doesn't matter. Not the company, the phones. I'm not talking about the company. Regardless. So if I count those and told you those without you knowing anything about Sydney Sweeney or her recent atrocities, you would think she's on the level of Zendaya, using Zendaya as an example as she was her co-star in Euphoria, and they are around the similar age of that Gen Z actress market. As those brands are often catering towards women, perhaps she's leaning into being feminine and sensual, exclusive, high fashion. Not that that is the only correct route one could take, but it seemed to be the route she was taking, or at least if you did not know better. But then, during the same times these partnerships were going on, she has partnered with Ford for a car commercial, partnered with Hey Dude, the casual football brand, and partnered with Baskin Robbins, which is an ice cream company if you did not know. And those brands lean, or the image she's portraying in those ads lean very sexy girl next door, or small town girl that you know that got big. Basically, approachable, achievable role she's playing that contradicts, in my opinion and in general, all the glamour sponsorships I mentioned earlier. And then in like a different category, we have the notorious Dr. Squatch ad, which you probably know is the men hygiene brand that made Sydney Sweeney body water soap, which I don't think can be put in a category any other than incel bait.
Hello, you dirty little boys. Are you interested in my body? Watch.
And with that move, she lost a lot of her, because that was before the American Eagle ad. With that, she lost a lot of her fan base, because the general public and a part of her fan base was on her side, mostly because she had the story of she does not want to be known as just a bombshell. She wants to be known as a serious actress. She hates the way that incels speak about her. She finds it uncomfortable, which are all very logical conclusions and statements for one to say. And anyone with a gram of their brain would obviously stand behind a person like that. Except then she catered to them with the ad and lost those fans. Overall, it seems Sydney Sweeney or her team, or both, because Sydney Sweeney is an adult, are taking any and every offer that slides her way. And if you know anything about economics or market value, exclusivity sells and leaves an impact, especially in the celebrity world, where you are selling an image, a persona, on top of your main career, which could be an actor, singer, comedian, maybe even influencer these days, but that's, I think, pushing it. It's important, whether we like it or not, to have an image in order to be boxed by. And Sydney, since the beginning of her career, was seen by a strange part of the public as a bombshell or a sex symbol. And as I said prior, she denied it, wished, which once again very reasonable, to be seen as more in her body. And her acting roles reflect that. She has a variety of them. However, her persona does not. For example, let's look at some famous bombshells or sex symbols, other than Sydney Sweeney, to illustrate my point. We have Pamela Anderson, who was exploited, yes, and in the current day is luckily less objectified, but still, Cindy Crawford back in her day, Angelina Jolie back in her prime day, Megan Fox, Marilyn Monroe especially, considering Sydney Sweeney is attempting Marilyn Monroeification of herself, Margot Robbie earlier. All of them are well framed or acting or whatever as the stereotypical bombshell in the media, but they were all either unfortunately exploited or leaned into it on purpose, making it either seem genuine or a dab, or in a way that they did not cheapen their appeal, but made it something to draw the audience in. Same for the actresses who were playing the quirky, relatable type, prime example being Jennifer Lawrence, back in the Hunger Games press run, maybe Drew Barrymore a bit, but all of them at some point or their entire career had a character, a stereotype they played, which was easy to box them into and sell. And like I said, I'm not speaking about being typecast, which is a different issue, but an issue that Sydney does not actually run into. No, while it could have some morale issues, the boxing in of celebrities, it is a fact that celebrities have a persona outside of their movies, a persona on red carpets and interviews. It keeps them profitable and most likely safe from exposing their actual personalities or thoughts or opinions even more, and allows the studios and the audience and the companies to put everyone in a neat little box. And Sydney seems lost, cheap, as I said earlier, because the contrasting sponsorship she chooses makes her the opposite makes the opposite ones, the ones in direct contrast, seem ingenuine. Like, you would not trust a mechanic, for example, to recommend you high fashion. And well, yes, obviously, we all know that celebrities don't really know most of the things they're talking about, or with most products they recommend. I'm talking about the image they build. Once again, circling back to Zendaya, for example, she is known as a glamorous it girl, a high fashion staple, if you will. And if her team accepted sponsorship for a perfume or makeup collection, and I am, for example, with the budget and in need of a new perfume or a piece of makeup, I will assume that what her team accepted and what she's done is done so in a way that will reflect her image, thus the product will most likely be good. And whether that is Yellable or parasocial or all of the above, it is the way that the industry makes its money. And if it did not work, they would not do it. But after this American Eagle ad, Sydney is no longer a cheap jack of all trades or even a Marilyn Monroe attempt. No, after the defense from the White House and Trump himself, she cemented herself a completely different role, which is a conservative MAGA it girl. And I feel no sympathy to say that I doubt that will be a profitable choice. Now, she can only advertise the gaudy and be known in public as the archetype she selected. And whenever this falls, and we have to hope that it will fall, she will stand behind and be forgotten by the public, discarded, or even perhaps publicly seen as someone who dropped their career or seen as someone pathetic. Perhaps Carrie Underwood could show her the way. Maybe there is some beauty in that, and perhaps there is money in yachting with Jeff Bezos and selling your own bathwater. I assume there is something to be gained out of it, otherwise she would not have done it. But that was my analysis, that was my video. Thank you so much for watching, and if you watched it and you're usually here for my K-pop themed videos, you have supported me and watched this one till the end, thank you so much, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!